What is up guys, welcome back to Kit Guru. I'm James and today we're starting another one of our custom build projects. If you caught my last video, you'll have seen that we completed the WD blackout build. We got some really positive comments on that video as well, and some positive comments about how the system looked, and that was really highly appreciated by me because it just makes all that hard work and effort worthwhile. So thanks for those comments. That build was more of a conventional kind of system inside just a standard ATX case. Obviously we had our own touches to it, custom distro plate and one thing and another. This new build today that we're starting is a little bit different to that, and you'll find out why very soon. So over the next couple of months we're going to be working in partnership with AMD. On the desk we've got quite a bit of hardware here. There's more to come as well. This is just the basic hardware components. There's obviously a lot of cooling going into this system as well. As you can see, we've got two systems here. So what we're going to be doing actually is building two systems inside one chassis. So this is going to be what you would say probably the ultimate gaming, streaming, video editing. More or less, you'll be able to do everything you want on this system. So AMD got in contact with us recently and said to us, how do you fancy building a high-spec all AMD system? Obviously, we said yes. We also thought it'd be good to add some of our own personalizations to the system as well. So we're going to do some mods to this system, as well as build it with some pretty high-end hardware. The build is sponsored by AMD. We also had a bit of help from Gigabyte and Corsair as well for this system, as you will probably see. These are the hardware components that's going to make up the system, and in fact it's going to be two systems built inside one chassis. So as you can see, we've got two motherboards, two CPUs, two GPUs, a lot of memory and a lot of storage that's going to be going into this system. And for you guys, the best part of this project is that we are going to be giving away this system when the project is complete. So we will run a competition at the end of the project, and one of you lucky guys will be able to walk away with this system. Somebody is going to be walking away with an absolute beast of a system here. So this video today is basically just a rundown or an introduction to what we're actually going to be doing here, and just going through the hardware that we're going to be using, what kind of cooling system that's going to be in this system, and also I'm going to give you a quick insight into the mods that I have planned. I'm not entirely sure exactly what I'm going to be doing yet. Through these projects I do like to improvise along the way, and you know, the design will change a little, but I will outline the initial mods that I have planned. And if any of you guys have any ideas of mods that you'd like to see in this system, let me know in the comment section. But before we dive into this video, if you're a fan of these projects, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to help support Kit Guru, head over to our store and pick up some merch, or you could subscribe to our Patreon. And we also have a new feature on YouTube now as well, where you could be a member of the channel as well. So if you want to click the join button, you can see your options there. And as always, head over to kitguru.net to catch up on all the latest hardware reviews and catch up on some tech news. As I've already mentioned, this project is going to be a dual system build. So that means we have two completely separate systems built inside one chassis. With that type of design, you can either have both systems running simultaneously or just one system on at a time. This kind of style is geared towards content creators and video editors, people who want to do some work on one system during the day, maybe editing a long video, and then you've got a long render that's going to tie up one system. Having another system inside the same PC means you can then do some gaming while the main system is rendering that video. So there's no downtime as such with a system like this, and it doesn't stop you enjoying some gaming in the evening if you've got something processing on your main system. So for the main system, it's a high-end desktop AMD motherboard. So this is the TRX40 Aorus Xtreme from Gigabyte. We actually had the choice of the Xtreme or the Master. Chose the Xtreme because that is the higher end board of the two. CPU is an AMD Ryzen Threadripper 3970X, 32 core, 64 thread monster of a productivity CPU. Although this build is sponsored by AMD, there is still a budget to stick to. The 3970X was in the budget. It would have been nice to use the 3990X, but we're sticking with the 3970X. In terms of memory, we've got two of these 32GB kits of Corsair Dominator Platinum RGB. These are the black modules, 3600 MHz and C16 latency. Obviously two kits, so that means 8 GB modules, so all the DIMM slots will be populated on the motherboard. And then in terms of storage, Our main drive, so the drive that will contain the Windows installation, is this Corsair MP600 core. This is a PCIe Gen 4 drive, and it's a 2TB version. And then for additional storage, we've gone for the reliable Samsung 870 QVO 4TB drive, SATA SSD. And then graphics for the main system, we're using a single 6900 XT. This is the Gigabyte gaming OC card, so that'll pretty much make up the main system. And then for the second system, which we will expect to be a gaming system, it's a mini ITX system. Motherboard is the X570i Aorus Pro Wi-Fi, so that's a pretty high-end, in fact that is one of the most high-end mini ITX motherboards on the X570 platform from Gigabyte. And the CPU is again a very high-end CPU. This is the AMD Ryzen 9 5900X, 12 cores, 24 threads, a base frequency of 3.7 GHz, and I think the boost frequency on that is up to 4.8 GHz. Storage for the gaming system, again it's a MP600 core from Corsair. This is just a 1TB one, and again this will be used as the main drive for the Windows installation. You'll also be able to install a couple of games and stuff on there as well. And again, for some additional storage, it's a 870 QVO from Samsung, and this is a 2TB version, so a bit less storage in the gaming system compared to the main system, but still 3TB is pretty decent. Memory for the gaming system, 32 gig of Corsair Dominator Platinum RGB again. This is 4000 MHz, and I believe this is 2x16 GB modules, and that is also C16 latency, which is pretty decent for an AMD system. And then graphics for the gaming system, we've got a reference Radeon RX 6800 XT. Because of all this high-end hardware, there's going to be a lot of heat generated inside this system, and that will obviously require some high-end cooling. As usual with these project builds, this one's going to be water cooled, and we've had some help from Corsair with that, with all this Hydro X gear. So the main system will be using the Hydro X XC9 RGB water block, specific to TR4 and LGA 2066. And then for the mini ITX system, it's just a regular desktop CPU, so I'll be using the Corsair Hydro X XC7 RGB water block. They're both very similar looking, almost identical looking actually. So they're the water blocks for the CPU. GPU water blocks, we've been sent 2 of these XG7 RGB blocks. Now these are actually designed to fit reference cards, so they will be a direct fit for the 6800 XT reference card, but not sure about this Gigabyte Gaming OC 6900 XT. We don't know whether that's going to fit yet, so before we finish this video I'm going to take a look at that and see if this reference block will fit. If not, I'll have a look at what other options are. I've already had a quick look and there isn't a lot of options, so we'll see how that one pans out later on in the video. But they're the water blocks anyway, the Corsair XG7s, at least we'll have one of those on the 6800 XT. The custom loop in this system is actually going to be a dual loop because it's a dual system, so we've got 2 XD5 RGB pump res combos. I'm thinking of customizing these parts as well a bit, as maybe color coding into the individual systems. I'm thinking, because it's a Radeon and Ryzen system, I'm thinking reds, oranges, not 100% sure yet, but I'm going to be trying to color code some of these parts, maybe even the water blocks as well. Maybe we'll try and color code them, or do something hydro dipping or some kind of customizations to the water blocks and to the pump res combos. As well as having good quality GPU, CPU water blocks, we're also going to need a lot of radiator capacity to cool this system, so we shouldn't disappoint there either, because Corsair has sent us 2 of these XR7 480mm rads, and these are 51mm thick. We should be able to fit 2 of those inside the chassis we're going to use. I'm also planning on doing a push-pull fan configuration on those 480mm rads. And then, as well as 2 480s, we've also got 2 XR5 420mm radiators. These are 30mm thick, so they're not as thick as the XR7s, but they're also, you know, 420mm, so they take 3 140 fans. And again, with those, I'm going to try, if possible, to run a push-pull fan configuration. The fans we're going to be using are going to be a combination of the Corsair LL140 RGBs and the Corsair LL120. So they've got pretty high static pressure. We're going to be running push-pull, so this should be good enough. And they've also got some nice RGB effects on those LL120s. And I think there's going to be a total of around about 30 fans in total in the system. So it's not going to be easy to fit all this in, but the case we've got for this system is a bit of a monster, and I'm going to have to clear everything off this bench to get that on to show you what I've got planned for that case. This is the Corsair Obsidian 1000D. Not sure about Obsidian, it should have been called Obscene. I think it's absolutely massive. It's actually a bit daunting stood next to this thing, knowing that you've got to build a system inside and you're expected to do some mods to it. I'm not one to shy away from a challenge, so I'm gonna crack on with it. But yeah, it is an absolute monster of a chassis. Probably not the most recent chassis. I think this was released in 2017 if memory serves correctly. And just as a comparison, this is a Corsair 4000D. This is one of Corsair's most recent. It's not a full-size ATX chassis, it's like a compact ATX chassis, but as you can see, inside there is a high-end desktop with a high-end graphics card. So that just showed you, it's a good comparison to show you how big this 1000D is compared to a compact ATX chassis that you get these days. So, remove this out of the way because we don't need this anymore. The 1000D, it's, like I said, it's absolutely massive. It's going to be definitely my most difficult challenge building this system and modding this system as well, especially modding this case. Challenges with this case is that the majority of the external panels are glass. I don't have these on, but both these side panels are glass, which is not too bad, especially this side. You know, still the side panel on this left hand side is still a modern design. One of the first mods, or one of the initial mods I've been thinking about, is changing this glass panel. I'm thinking maybe we can have a metal, either steel, probably steel, might be a bit heavy, or an aluminium front panel, laser cut, maybe laser cut with some kind of mesh front as well. Maybe some mini AMD logos making up a mesh. And maybe also, instead of just having it just as a straight panel like this glass panel is, maybe have it so it wraps around and follows the contours of this plastic part as well. I'm not entirely sure. If you guys have any ideas that you'd like to see in this build as well, let me know. But one way or another, I'm definitely going to change that front panel, and maybe we could kind of turn this into a high airflow 1000D. But yeah, that's definitely something I'm going to do. Another one of the mods to the case that I definitely want to do as well is change this arrangement down here as well. This power supply shroud, that has got to stay because this is where the mini ITX system will be. But I'm not really a fan of this like box system here. If you take this top panel out from around the back of the system, you can see that in this metal box is where you would install your 3.5 inch drives. We don't have any 3.5 inch drives going in this system, so there's absolutely no need for us to have that. So what I'm thinking is that maybe I can extend this power supply shroud so that it comes in line with this motherboard tray. I think that would look a bit neater. Maybe we could make it out of some red acrylic, or maybe it could have a red acrylic top or a red acrylic front, and then either an aluminium front or aluminium top. Not entirely sure. Again, I want to also probably integrate some AMD branding in that, so maybe a Ryzen logo or Radeon logo, something like that. That is definitely something that we will be looking at later on in this series. And if there's any other areas of the case that I can mod, the top panel is a combination of aluminium and glass. Maybe we could also turn that top panel into a high airflow panel, because there's not a lot of not a huge gap there for airflow coming out of the top of the case, and we're going to have those two radiators up in there. One feature of this case that I do quite like is this. You have to just unloosen the screw, and then you've got a tray that pulls out there for a radiator. So up in the top there you can install one of your rads, and then same at the front as well. That kind of pulls out. You can fit two 480mm radiators in there as well. You also got dust filters in here, and at the front as well. We'll probably keep those dust filters in, and as you can see, we've got space for a lot of fans. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 120mm fans that can go at the front. Obviously, we're thinking of doing a pull-push configuration on those two 480mm radiators. So there'll be 16 fans just in the front of the case, and then on the top it's 140 fans. So there'll be 140mm fans in there. You can get two 120 or 140mm fans in the rear as well. So like I said, there's going to be a lot of fans in this system. I mean, one of the challenges with this system will be just making sure that all the cabling and stuff looks neat. I also plan to make some custom cables, as always, with this system, and instead of just sleeving the original cables that come with the Corsair power supplies, I'm actually thinking of making a full set of completely custom length cables for both systems. For those of you that are not familiar with a dual system layout in the 1000D, which I imagine will be the majority of people watching, because let's face it, I don't think many people will have bought this case because it is a real specialist case. It is a pretty conventional layout at the top. So the motherboard for the main system, which is an E80X motherboard, will just fit in the usual spot. Just hope it stays on that peg in the middle. So that just fits in the usual spot in that vertical orientation. That fits there, and graphics card for that system will be just in and horizontal, obviously with a water block on it. There is actually a plate you can change at the back if you wanted to vertically mount this graphics card, but because we're having a second system in, that's not really possible. And then just get a screwdriver. At the back of the case, there's a small panel you take off down at the bottom. So there's just 4 screws that hold this in. So you take out those 4 screws, that panel lifts out, and then that allows you to install the Mini ITX motherboard on top of the power supply shroud. But because our Mini ITX motherboard is a high-end one, it's got an integrated I/O shroud and it's got an armor plate on the back, it's a bit tricky getting that in. See, it's a bit awkward and doesn't want to go in straight away. So you remove another 2 screws from the back, and then just remove one of these PCIe slot covers, and then the whole PCIe slot, or the lower portion of the PCIe slot covers, comes out, and that allows this motherboard for the Mini ITX system to be put in place down at the bottom. You can put these PCIe slot covers back in, and that's your dual system layout. So your graphics card for the bottom system will obviously be vertically mounted, and again, this is going to be using a water block, so we don't have any worries with airflow restrictions due to the graphics card being close to this side panel. Obviously these cables will be out of the way, hidden behind the motherboard tray, and then the plan for water cooling the system, because we have 2 of these XD5 pump res combos, we'll probably have these up here side by side. Obviously I want to do away with that box there and extend this power supply shroud, but they'll be side by side there. Obviously one of the pump res combos will be feeding the CPU and the GPU at the top of the system, and then the main system will be cooled with those 2 480mm rads at the front. So there'll be 2 of these side by side, one feeding the top system, and then the other one that'll be feeding the CPU and the GPU of this Mini ITX system with a 420mm or 2 420mm up at the top of this case. We may have to do away with this drawer and see if I can hard mount those up in the roof of the case, but you can see there's an absolute ton of space at the top of the case. So we'll not have any issue with running push-pull fans. Even with push-pull fans on that radiator, there's going to be loads of space at the top. Same at the front. So that's basically the layout inside this side of the case. I'll just take these motherboards out before that one falls out, cause any damage. Around the right-hand side, you've got these lovely French doors. that hide everything away. Not sure whether I'll keep them on, maybe I will, because I might have to mount the 2.5-inch drives up there, because it doesn't look like there's anywhere else to mount those 2.5-inch drives. One other thing to notice is there is a Commander Pro that comes pre-installed in here, but I'm thinking with all the fans we're going to be putting in, I don't think one's going to do the job, so we've got another four Commander Pros, so we've got plenty if we need to like daisy chain those. The 3.5-inch drive bays down here will hopefully be gone, and then the power supply for the main system fits in the conventional space underneath the power supply shroud. And then because we removed this panel at the back of the case, a SFX power supply will fit here, and that'll be obviously powering the Mini ITX system. So that's basically everything you need to know about the layout of the system and the initial mods that I've got planned for the chassis. Before I sign off on this video, I want to take a look at this Gigabyte gaming OC card, see if that HydroX reference water block will fit. I have my doubts because this is not technically a reference PCB. I'm going to take the cooler off, see if that block will fit, and if you just put this next to a reference card, you can see that the gaming OC card, the PCB will be a bit longer, so I'm not very confident that that HydroX block will fit, but I'll give it a try first and see. It might not look too bad if just a bit of the PCB is you know, hanging past the block, but got a feeling it won't fit. So let's have a look at that. So the 1000D's out of the way, we've made a bit of space on the bench. I've got the 6900 XT gaming OC and a Corsair HydroX XG7 RGB water block. This is a reference block for 6900 and 6800 cards. Officially this doesn't support the Gigabyte gaming OC card, but since we've got it, I'll have a look, see if there's any potential that we could make it fit with some mods or whatever. If not, I'll have a look to see if there are any alternatives. The first thing to do is to remove the stock cooler from this card. So it's a Gigabyte card. They're usually pretty simple to remove. One thing to note about this cooler is there's not any stickers saying warranty void if you remove these, so this could potentially be a good card to buy if you're thinking of water cooling a 6900 XT and you don't want to void warranty by removing the cooler. So first I'm going to remove these 4 screws. As you can see, those are the 4 screws that go around the GPU die and they're spring loaded. And then there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws on this back plate. So with those screws removed, we should be able to open the card up. Yep. So that's that, and you can see there's 2 connections here. Fans and probably RGB. They're usually a little bit tricky to remove these. That's one come out pretty easily. So just had to lever it out with a screwdriver to make sure that I didn't pull any wires off. So that's the cooler removed. It has left the remnants of a bit of thermal pad on the VRM MOSFET, which is sometimes the case. So I'll just try and remove those and preserve them best I can. Not that we'll need this really anyway, but I'll just clean off a bit of the thermal compound from the GPU die using a bit of alcohol. I suppose while I'm here as well, I may as well use the isopropyl alcohol to clean the memory chips as well and clean the VRM MOSFET. So I'll just remove the remaining screws that are holding the back plate on. So now that back plate should remove as well. And it does. There's just a single thermal pad that contacts the back of the GPU die. So the length of the HydroX reference block, it doesn't look far off for this gaming OC card, but you can instantly see a problem. The cutout for the PCIe connectors, that's only big enough for 2 PCIe connectors. If this was a 2 connector card, it might actually fit this block, but you can see there's an interference there with that 3rd PCIe connector. Technically we could overcome that by just cutting this area out, maybe unscrewing that end panel as well. I'm not sure how neat we could make that. If you flip it over as well, I don't know how clearly you can see this, but if you try and line up the standoffs around the GPU die, you can see that they line up pretty well, and then a couple of the standoffs at the front here also line up, but then at the back of the card there's not really anything. Maybe one in the middle there that lines up, or maybe one at the bottom. If you did try and bolt this block on, maybe the distribution of pressure wouldn't be optimal, so it could potentially fit, and as a last resort, if we can't find anything else, we could use that block. But before I completely disregard that block or disregard using anything else, I'm gonna have a look online and see if there are any other options. Maybe EK has a block, maybe someone else like Barrow or Bixby or something like that. Maybe we'll be able to find one there, so I'll have a look and then we'll come back and let you know what the findings are. So I've done a bit of digging online, and one of the first things I've come across which looks promising is this Bixby full coverage GPU water block for and backplate for Gigabyte 6800, 6900 XT gaming OC cards, which is the same card that we're using. If you've ever tried to buy Bixby water cooling parts in the UK, you'll know that it is difficult to get hold of parts. There's not a lot of distributors in the UK, and the Bixby distributors, they don't always have all the parts in stock or available, so it's quite tricky. And I actually contacted the Bixby US distributor. They're not willing to ship to the UK at the moment because of Brexit and because of issues with import charges and all that, so that was not an option. But I actually managed to find the same GPU water block on eBay of all places from a different retailer in the US that was willing to ship to the UK. So I thought, great, that's a good option, we could maybe use that. But then I actually contacted this distributor, and it turns out that this block is for the 2 PCI connector version. So we've got 3 PCIe power connectors, and technically this block isn't supported on our 3 PCIe connector card. So because of that, I wasn't really willing to risk $199 plus shipping to see if it fits and then have an issue with returning it or whatever. So that was kind of out. Apparently Bixby are working on another block for the 3 connector version, so if that came along anytime soon, we could possibly use that. But in the meantime, I did a little bit more digging online, and it seems that there might be an option from EK. Since we started planning this project, it seems like EK may have brought out a block that'll fit. But if you actually use the EK configurator and you select AMD as your GPU brand, and then if we scroll right down to 6900 XT and we go on Gigabyte, if you try and select the gaming OC card, in fact it doesn't even come up on there, so it doesn't look as though there is an option from EK. But if you actually go to the EK shop, go on water blocks, and you go on full cover AMD water blocks 6800, 6900, it seems as if since we started planning this build, EK has brought out a block for the Gigabyte Aorus Master 6900 XT card. And then if you scroll down on here, click on the "Is my PC compatible?" then that brings you to this list which shows the compatibility, and you've got physical compatibility, which means EK has physically fitted that water block to the card. So there's 3 different Aorus Master cards. So then if you look right at the bottom of this list, we've got visual compatibility. So that's usually EK has visually compared the PCB. So at the bottom of that list, we have the 6800 XT and 6900 XT gaming OC, which is the card that we have here. So that's very interesting. And then obviously I've got a visual reference or the PCB layout of this 6900 XT gaming OC right in front of me. And if you compare the 2 PCBs, you'll see that they look, if not completely identical, they look almost identical. All the mounting holes are in the same place. all the capacitors, VRM, MOSFET, and everything else looks like it's an identical match. So I'm pretty confident that if I order that EK block, it will fit this gaming OC card. So any of you that have this 6900 XT gaming OC, and if you've been trying to get a water block that is a direct fit, EK has one, but just don't do a search on the EK configurator for the gaming OC card. Make sure you search for the Aorus Master, and you should be able to get a water block that is a direct fit for your 6900 XT gaming OC. So I've ordered one of those blocks. It should be coming in the next couple of days. So maybe not in this video, but in the future video, we'll check that out, make sure it fits right. So that's it for this video. If you were expecting a load of mods, I'm sorry to disappoint. That's not really what we're doing these first videos. It's more of an introduction to the project, an introduction to the build and the mods, and just a rundown of the hardware that we're going to use and how the systems are going to be laid out and so on. Good news about that water block for this gaming OC card. That should be coming in the next couple of days, so we'll catch up with that again in one of the later episodes. And in part 2, we'll start off with the mods. So we'll probably be looking at the case mods, maybe some of the internal components as well. So make sure you don't miss part 2 and 3 and 4 that should be coming very soon. If you do enjoy watching these project builds, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can also now become a member of the channel on YouTube, so click the join button and see what your options are there. And if you want to help support Kit Guru, subscribe to our Patreon, head over to the store, pick up some Kit Guru merch. And as always, if you want to keep up with all the in-depth hardware reviews and some tech news, head over to kitguru.net. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.